Hey everyone. So I am very sorry that I missed last week's live. I do apologize for that. Just been a really, really busy month for me. This week on a Wednesday live, we're going to go again into Shin Do Happi Kogi, which again is um, by Ashiwara Kengyo, commented on by Yokota Kampu Sensei. And we're going to be going into Tai Nestu or Big Heat. Now, this is a very interesting chapter, and especially for those who who have small children, and those children often get fevers. It's often about things that we have to deal with, and it's stuff that you're going to see every day in clinic. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into the chapter. If you're new to this channel, please do like, subscribe, and hit the little bell to be notified of future videos coming all about Japanese medicine. And you can come geek out here with me whenever you'd like. All right, so let's get into Big Heat or Tai Nestu. So according to Shin Do Happi Kogi, and I'm just doing a rough translation here. I'm going to read it out. So all of the points, you're going to want to quickly insert the needle and quickly remove it. Then you're going to want to not close the hole. You're wanting to needle a lot of places in the shoulders, the upper back, the neck, and the nape, like the nape area, this whole area. And you're also going to want to needle the head and the hands in between the fingers. Be careful not to hit any of the sinews and needle many places. And then that should resolve the heat. So this is a very simple line. We're going to go into this line by line, and just so we can understand this. Let's first really define what Tai Nestu or big heat is. So it defines it really simply as Tai Nestu is not exactly a fever. It is that the surface of the skin, essentially what you can think of as the taiyang, so this head, neck, really going all the way down the back, that area has a high heat level. So that is different than rinetsu or internal heat. Now, internal heat is coming from, of course, issues with excess heat in perhaps, I'm just reading off of this, so sorry, I'm not looking at the camera, excess heat in the stomach and GI tract, or perhaps excess heat in the lung and the stomach, or perhaps in the liver and gallbladder. And so that heat can appear in a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different things that can go into that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that translation, but we're really dealing again with surface heat, big heat that's on the surface of the skin. Now, if we go into this, and by the way, surface heat is really coming back to this Shokanlong, Changkanlun mechanism disease theory. So if you're interested more about like how heat is really presenting in the body, I highly suggest you check out Changkanlun, or you can come to a group like mine to start learning about the Changkanlun and how it can present in the body, and then how you can actually apply that knowledge to your acupuncture and moxibustion. So we'll get into the mechanism of disease here in a minute, but really what we're talking about here when we talk about needling quickly and removing the needle quickly. So this is a very specific line, and it's referring to a very specific kind of needling technique. And that means when you needle, you're supposed to insert the needle quickly and take it out quickly. There is no retention of the needle. So there are three classical needle techniques really that can be broken up into three main categories. That's to remove it quickly, insert quickly, remove quickly, to insert slowly, remove quickly, or into insert slowly and remove slowly, right? And then was there a fourth? Am I forgetting one? There is a fourth, sorry. Insert quickly, remove slowly. So there's a bunch of different needling techniques, but when you're doing what's called sokushin sokubatsu, or insert quickly, remove quickly, this is a hands down particular dispersive needle technique. So when he says insert the needle quickly, and take it out quickly, he is saying that he wants you to disperse, even though he doesn't say disperse. That is a dispersive needling technique. And you do that, in many places on, again, the head, neck, nape, shoulders, all this upper back area. And that's because you're going to want to find points with your palpation that you can palpate that heat, and then be able to insert the needle quickly and take it out quickly in order to remove the points where you're feeling the heat. Now, for those of you who don't have sensitive hands or have not developed your palpation correctly, you're going to want to maybe rely a little bit more on some of your protocol textbooks on how to remove heat. I'm not talking about LA11 here. That is a TCM protocol thing. I actually never heard about that until I came back to the States. You're going to want to, perhaps go to, I don't know, any of the protocol points that you might think off the top of your head in the neck, nape, upper back area to remove heat. Ideally, though, you're going to want to palpate and find for where that heat is the hottest, and especially on the surface of the skin. Because remember, we're not trying to get at that internal heat, that excess heat that might be in the lungs or in the intestines or the zongfu, right? We're trying to get something that's on the surface, that's coming to the taiyang level. And then also, he mentions that you're not going to want to close the holes of any of these points. That, again, is a huge, huge in your face dispersive needle technique statement. So combining, insert quickly, take the needle out quickly, and don't close the hole. He's saying you want to disperse this big heat. So just so I don't miss anything. Oh, there was something really, really important in this text that I really loved. And it's talking about when matching the pulse to your needling. So I've made another video about how I think Hara diagnosis is really the queen, but I think a lot of people don't understand Hara diagnosis. So let's take it back to our pulse and understand how our pulse can now dictate our technique. So if the pulse is fast, then your needling should be fast, meaning if the pulse is really quick, you're going to want to insert quickly and disperse quickly. That is a excess pulse. Now, if the pulse is slow, you're going to want to do the opposite. You want to do a tonifying technique. Tonifying technique could be insert slowly, pull out quickly, because we want to gather ki and then leave it there and close the hole. It can also be insert slowly and retention. This is another place that's good for retention, but you're always going to want to match that pulse to your technique. It's a very, very important thing. Let's see. So I'm just trying to read through because there was a lot of really, really good points in this chapter that I really, really loved. So let's talk about many points and what many points really means. So many points is not saying that you're just supposed to do willy-nilly all over the place. Many points, that means you're supposed to find the points, all the points that have that heat on the surface of, again, these areas we've talked about. And also he mentioned the area along in between the hands and the fingers. Those are places where you're going to feel and palpate for heat. And again, if you don't understand how to palpate for heat yet, you might need to rely a little bit more on protocol and finding some textbooks that give you good points for that. When it says be careful not to hit the sinews, especially here on the hands, it's just a very bony area. And so it's telling you to be careful to not, insert a needle into a tendon or into the bone. So they're trying to be very careful. And you have to remember that when this book was written, Shin Do Happi, when it was written originally by Ashiwara Kengyo, their needles were not nearly as refined as they are now. I would say now, if you use some of the needles that we use, at least in Japanese acupuncture for the most part, they're not really strong enough to go through a bone. But, I think back in the day, they might have been made of iron or whatever. There is some references to the Su Wen in here, to the 59 needling techniques. And there's a whole passage about that, but I'm not going to translate that all here because it's just a lot of translation. So I'm going to leave that for my students once I finally translate this book in ShinKyu. But going back to the passage, really what we're trying to do here is release heat ki or heat chi from the body. And I think it's important to understand what releasing heat chi is, because we're not just inserting a point and just trying to be like, oh, I'm just doing it. It's really important to understand. I think a lot of people, when they first see a patient and they're like, oh, they have heat in their body, and they don't really try to understand where that heat is coming from. And this is where I really do believe that getting into the Yashinomichi in particular mechanism of disease and then studying books like the Shanghanlun can help you dial in your acupuncture. And that's really to help you understand where this heat is coming from. And there's a whole passage in this book talking about, okay, is this heat coming from the taiyang? Is it coming from the Shaoyang? Is it coming from the Yang Ming? In particular, what is happening and what created the circumstances to allow this evil qi or jaki, xie qi to invade the body? And where exactly is it invading to? What was the pathway that got it there? and what's the pathway that's going to get it out, because those are the things you really need to understand when you start to treat. So for example, if there's an issue of deficiency in the stomach, which I think is really easy to understand, and then all of a sudden you have a fever created, is this fever helping you to push out that Qi? Are we in the mechanism of disease level 2 is what that's called, is when things are starting to recede in towards the body. Are we in that stage? And if that's the case, we need to make sure that the body has help to get that heat out. Because if we go in and just start to and ignore the deficiencies in the stomach, what we might end up doing is creating more receding into the body. And then we're going to create that internal heat that we really, really don't want. So it's important to understand really those mechanisms. And I think it's important to understand what exactly a fever is. Oftentimes when we have fevers, we start to prescribe, we always get a little bit nervous about that fever, hurting the brain. I'm a mom myself, so I also have fears about this, or, hurting any of the spinal fluid when the fever gets too high. And I think those fevers are very founded. But I think it's important to understand that a lot of times the fever is there to help the body push out that pathogen, right? Whether that's a virus or bacteria, if that's that qi or evil qi, however you want to term it, that heat, that fever on the surface is there. And when we just use like Tylenol or something like that to bring down the fever on the surface, what can happen is that fever can then recede into the lungs and create a horrible cough. It can recede into the spleen or the stomach, like the physical spleen, and we can start to get internal heat that really starts to cause a lot of issues in the body. So when you're treating this surface heat, remember, there is this basic treatment of, yes, you want to do a lot of points that have heat on the neck, nape, shoulders, sometimes in between the fingers on the hands, and you don't want to close the hole. Quick insertion, quick take out. Don't close the hole. Yes, that is the basic treatment, but you really need to understand that when you're utilizing this treatment on a client, that is the best treatment for the client, because it's very rare that you can do just a heat removal treatment and possibly not make things recede and make that internal heat. So I really do think it's important to think about that. Sometimes we have external heat that's false and that internal true heat as well. So there's a lot of things that you need to understand when you start to apply these things. The theory in our medicine can be very uber complicated, I feel. But if you really bring it down to your palpation and say, okay, is there other things going on? Is this just simply a fever? Or do they have this internal cold that's allowing it to recede? Do I need to tonify something here? I think those are all really important questions to have. And then also trying to understand as well, is this in the Taiyang? Is this in the Xiaoyang? Do we have that oscillating heat, right? Is this in the Yang Ming? Do we have, for example, stomach flu, right? Is this an internal heat, or is this just on the surface and starting to recede into it, right? So a Yang Ming external heat or surface heat is going to be different than a Yang Ming internal heat, because when that heat is on the surface and receding towards the stomach, and let's say you got food poisoning or something like that, or I don't know, that's going to be a completely different presentation than if that has already gone into the stomach and it's receded into the stomach. Buckley's Angel, I love you too. I don't know you, but hi. Yeah, so I think it's really important that you understand all of these concepts about our theory, and try to be really careful when you do apply these techniques, because again, you can remove that excess heat on the surface and accidentally cause the body to be dispersed too much and cause too much internal deficiency, and then cause it actually to recede, that external heat to recede into the body when you didn't mean to. Another thing that you really want to be careful about is the technique that you use to apply it, because a lot of times people will say, oh, I applied the technique perfectly, but yet the patient has gotten worse. They've created that internal heat situation. Or you thought you dispersed, really you tonified, and these are really good things to check back in with the pulse when you're doing these treatments. Has the pulse gotten faster? Again, fast pulse equals you need to disperse. Slow pulse equals you need to tonify. We want that good middle moderate pulse, right? Moderate's not a great word for it, a good even pulse. And the last thing that is mentioned in this book is that if you do have that external heat with Sheiqi or that Jaki on the surface, You can also do bloodletting. I like to call that a paper cut. I hate the word bloodletting, but you can use bloodletting to release a little bit of blood and then release that surface heat as well. Again, this is a point where you really should be careful to make sure that you're releasing the correct amount and not too much for the client. And that client, again, doesn't have that a strong internal deficiency, because you can make bloodletting can just be so strong and it can make things recede quite quickly. So that is a very, very quick, extremely quick overview of Tai Nestu, or Big Heat, by Shin Do Happi Kogi, which originally written by Ashiwara Kengyo, commented on by Yokota Kampu Sensei. A really, really amazing book. Unfortunately, only in Japanese. If you are looking to purchase this book, and you read Japanese, hopefully. Let me see where the publisher is. I might, it's, I can give you the ISBN, and maybe I'll type that in the comments later if you're interested in buying it. Or better yet, what I'll do is, if anybody's interested in buying it, just comment below and I'll send you a direct link to where you can get it. Again, the book is only in Japanese. This book and the ideas that this book covers, and so much more, I do cover in ShinKyu University, which is a really all-encompassing platform to help TCM practitioners get Japanese acupuncture fundamentals in both technique, theory, and application, so you can, bridge that gap between your TCM and the Japanese medicine, and then take that information and go on and really study for more advanced teachers. If you're interested in that program, would love to have you. There is a link for it in the description box below. You can also comment below I want in if you would like. We will have a next live Wednesday next week. And in that live Wednesday, I have not yet decided on the topic. So if you are really curious about something and you're like, I would love to learn about this, please let me know below, because I am still debating on kind of what I want to do, if I want to do more theory or if I want to do some technique. I'm leaning towards technique. So you let me know. All right. So thank you everyone for learning with me today and practicing with me today. I really appreciate your time, effort, and energy. Again, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and the little bell. And I really look forward to seeing you again here on Live Wednesdays and all the other content that I put out. Have a great day.